jump into a couple of the boring things first, get the housekeeping things out of the way, and then we will go from there. So first thing, I just want to mention this is being recorded. So folks that are joining, if anyone can't be here for the full time, I will send out a recording afterwards. So no sweat if you have to drop off a little bit early. We've got 45 minutes planned for today. And we're talking to some legends, which I'll introduce in a second here. So yeah, thank you all for being here. Excited to chat about this. The other thing I'd mention up front, we'll do intros in just a second, but I just wanted to mention up front, I think from my perspective, like things are changing a lot in the go-to-market space. I'm sure everyone here is feeling it. I sure am. I've been doing go-to-market for the last 10 or 12 years. And at least in the 12 years I've been in the space, I haven't felt the rate of change to the degree I have in the last kind of 18, 24 months. Even in the past 6 months, I think models have gotten to a point where it's very interesting and we can start to do things that just technically weren't possible 8 months ago. And so we're all trying to figure this out together. So that's my goal with today's conversation is like, how do we learn from some operators that are doing these things, that are building at the bleeding edge? And yeah, we're all trying to learn together. So excited for the conversation. Let me share my screen. So like I said, we're going to go through a couple of things here. I think we'll go through intros in a minute, and then we'll jump right into the conversation. So Michelle, maybe I'll just start with you. If you can jump in and introduce yourself, that would be awesome. And then we'll get into it.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Brendan, and for the warm welcome. I'm a senior manager of RevOps here at Nooks. Nooks is a tool that allows SDRs and AEs to do intelligence outbound, which only matters if we're changing how work gets done. So that's what we're doing over here.
Amazing. Nandika, I'll kick it over to you.
Hi, excited to be here. Nandika, I'm a founding growth engineer at Default. Default's a small startup. We do revenue orchestration for B2B companies. Yeah, I'm excited to chat.
Awesome. All right, Anthony.
Hey, Anthony Goldblum, co-founder and CEO of Sumble. I have a background in data science, machine learning. Had previously started a company called Kaggle, which is a large machine learning AI community, and now co-founder and CEO of a company called Sumble. And we aim to be the cleanest, richest, most actionable go-to-market data that a company has ever used before, powering things like account scoring, which is our topic for today.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, everyone, thank you for being here. And yeah, maybe in the chat, it would be helpful. I feel like account scoring, this is like a topic that's been around for a long time. In my mind, a lot of things have changed specifically around account scoring in the past, I don't know, 6 months or something. AI unlocks a bunch of interesting use cases, which we'll talk about. What's up, Jason? Good to see you here. Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Sumble. Maybe if you could put in chat, like, what is your role? I think this is the other thing in my mind. I think account scoring touches a bunch of different roles. Or titles. So I'd love to hear in the chat who is on the call and what are the titles or roles of folks here. All right, so and yeah, we'll talk a little bit about this. Yeah, GTM engineer, RevOps, amazing. Okay, I wanted to start the conversation just to level set. GTME, director of sales, see a marketing person, marketing ops. What's up, Ivani? Good to see you here. Co-founder, SDR, don't trust marketing's account scoring at all. Incredible, Connor. I agree. I came up in sales and I have been skeptical of account scoring. So we're going to get into it today and debunk it. Let's talk first maybe about what was breaking for each of you, Michelle and Nandika. Michelle, I'll start with you. Maybe breaking is not the right word, but just like generally, I know you went through a big project recently around account scoring. What was like the impetus of that project? What made you decide to go do that?
Yeah, so we had lots of data, from various vendors and places we were pulling. We didn't have enough confidence. And so we lost a little bit of rep trust and GTM org trust within that. And so I guess there was a lot breaking because, RevOps, we do all this planning and territory analysis. We create the hiring plan, we create quotas, the entire plan for the year based off of data that we're trusting at the time that we had it, and translated to not so great territories for some folks. And so we knew we had to change that first and foremost. And then what I realized was that the underlying data was really the premise of how strong an account scoring model is, amongst other things, but mainly. And so, yeah, we built a new model using powered by Sumble's data.
Awesome. Yeah, makes a ton of sense. And I'm excited. We'll talk about it in a second here, but like I think the things that are downstream of account scoring is very important. There's like a lot of things. So we'll talk about that in a second. Nandika, would you mind sharing kind of what brought you to do account scoring when you kind of first came across it and how you went about it?
Yeah, for sure. I think at default, we had a ton of separate automations running and multiple touch points across an account, across like a form fill or a website visit or publication we would see online about it. But there was no like systemic way of identifying like high intent accounts, and that was missing from like our prospecting process at scale. And so every Monday, like a BDR would log into Salesforce and handpick a lot of the accounts. And I feel like in the age of AI that we live in, human effort is so precious that that wasn't the best use of their time. And so we had to like figure out a way to identify high fit, high intent accounts at scale such that they were spending their time doing manual human led outreach on the ones that deserved human touch points, and the rest of the accounts that were not such high intent, high fit, we could just automate outreach to. So that was the whole purpose behind it.
Amazing. Awesome. And then Anthony, I don't know if you have anything to share on this topic. I'm curious, you have a unique lens. Again, we'll talk about this in a little more detail in a second here, but you've talked to a ton of companies doing this. What do you see as like the inflection point, or are there like one or two specific times that you generally see companies coming to Sumble or just generally trying to figure out account scoring?
Yeah. Well, maybe just to take a step back and calibrate a little bit, I think I have probably spoken to over 100 companies about their account scoring. And so I think I've seen sort of a lot of different approaches. I've worked pretty closely with Michelle. I see Nate from Orkra. I hope you don't mind me calling you out, but Nate and I have spent a bunch of time together as well. As well as many, many others. And, one thing, and I remember there was a comment in the thread, I think it was an SDR or an SDR leader said they don't trust their account scores. I think there is, done well, account scoring ends up being a very heavy load-bearing system in a go-to-market team that is used again and again and again. And done poorly, account scoring is this thing that nobody trusts that has very little influence. But if you can do account scoring really well, I feel like so many systems end up being built on top of it. There's the obvious ones like territory planning, but it's not just doing territory planning, but doing territory planning in a way that reps like believe and trust the results. It can be very low morale for a sales team when they don't really trust that they have a good territory. And then within that, once the territory has been allocated, which accounts do reps work. If done well, they can sort of read that just off the account score. And if the account score has deep links to the underlying values that power it, then the rep also has a starting point on where to focus within an account. If you have a good account scoring model, you can also apply that on the overall account universe to identify white space. If you have good account scores, it can power ABM programs. I'm running an event in Austin. Who are the top scored accounts that are headquartered in Austin that I might want to invite to this event? I'm running a webinar, like we are today. Who are the people I most want to invite to that webinar? Lead routing, Nandika, this was your use case, right? A lead comes in, like how much priority should we put on it? On the flip side of lead routing is automatic disqualification, right? So if you have account scoring you really, really trust, then it can be used again and again and again by sales, rev ops, and marketing. And if you have account scoring that is not that strong, that nobody really trusts, then it ends up being a system that is not heavily relied upon. And so I feel very strongly that's perhaps the two most load-bearing parts of a GTM system are account scoring, and then within that, people scoring or lead scoring. And so we're tackling half of that today.
Yeah, amazing. By the way, I see a couple of questions in the chat. I'll pull in some questions. So if people have specific questions, would love to answer them. I'll pull them up as I see them. Maybe we could start with Kyle. I'll come back to your question in a second here. Thank you for asking. Nandika, would you mind sharing like maybe get into some of the details on your account scoring journey as you built it out? Like, what are the systems that you're using? I know you maybe were going to share your screen a little bit. Feel free to like just jump in and talk to us a little bit about how you have built out account scoring.
For sure. I think with account scoring, I wanted to answer two questions, like why this account and like why now? And I wanted that data to be visible to the sales rep to establish trust in the process and the model. The way I've seen account scoring done previously is like a propensity score. You just get like a score and it tells you that these are the accounts that you should go after. But there was a lot of lack of transparency around account scoring and like what's going into the model. So I approached this with the process of making that visible and like forefront in my model, and pushing that data to the CRM, to like a web app, to Slack, so that it covers all surfaces that a rep may want to interface with on a daily basis. And also like data that they could use in outreach to personalize at scale without having to open multiple tabs or like click through like LinkedIn or like Google the company or the prospect that they're reaching out to. So that was the premise behind account scoring for me. So I would love to share like the UI I built so that reps could see the data that I was pulling in. So I'm going to share in just a second. And then the way I scored accounts was on a tiered basis from like P1 to like P2, P4, P1 being highest and like P4 being lowest. And they were ranked across like an X and Y axis, X being like fit, Y being like timing. And so, for example, if I wanted to score an account one-off, I'll click this would run against the CRM. So this has already been enriched and computed. So that's why you see all this stuff coming in quickly, but usually it takes like 2 to 5 minutes for an account to be scored. And it says like call now. So this is like a high fit account. I mean, not a surprise because it's Cloudflare.
By the way, do you mind zooming in just a little? It's
yeah, for sure.
I'm noticing.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So we just see some data on the company's firmographic shape that we care about. Website traffic, their sales model, their hybrid. So we give them like 5 out of 10 points. If they have an enterprise AE, so on and so forth. This is data we pulled from Sumble, all the tech stack stuff. So we can see their Salesforce setup, their data infra, scheduling, automations, whatever we detect via Sumble. So they unfortunately have no interactions with us, so they don't get any points here. But when I scroll down, this is again done with like inference that we pull from job descriptions that we pull from Sumble. So we can see that they're hiring for a go-to-market engineer, and that's the persona we sell to. So we see some plain language in the JD that we sort of infer with just like an LLM. I think I run Sonnet on it, and just like links back, probably open the Sumble link. This is all data that a rep has access to on an account level at scale that they can sort of use to go and put it into like a sequencer, find the RevOps persona that they want to reach out to and sort of have this information in their hands to do outreach.
This is amazing. Yeah, getting lots of comments in the chat. Yeah, this is awesome. And so it's doing tool calls into Sumble, you've got first party data connected in as well, it looks like.
Yeah.
Like, is that Salesforce marketing automation, form fill, stuff like this? Are there other tools that it's doing calls into?
I use DeepMind pretty heavily to orchestrate sort of other providers outside of Sumble.
Yep.
For headcount data, for website data, website traffic data, and so on and so forth. So those are the main providers, and this runs like on GitHub Actions and sends data to like a Postgres database. So that's mainly the setup.
Amazing. Awesome. Anything else you want to share on this? Yeah, this is cool. You should open source this. Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else you want to share on this? Otherwise, I'm going to kick it over to you, Michelle. But anything else, Nandika, on kind of how you built this out and how you thought through the process?
Yeah. I think the one thing I would point out is that data points can be fuzzy and not always accurate. So they're like duplicative data points included as like a hedge against finding inaccurate data. And so you may like, if you really get into it, you may wonder, why am I pulling like sales data again? Why am I pulling like AE data again? It's sort of like a hedge. And then the scoring is done as such that even with a little bit of inaccurate data points that may get pulled in as a result of like hallucinations or like provider data being muddy, it's set up such that the overall scoring sort of balances itself out as a result of that.
And then a question in chat about it. How does this get pulled into downstream systems? So where is it surfaced to the rep?
Yeah.
Do they go to this, like, is this a website that they go to, or how do they interface with this?
Yeah, this is just like a Vercel deployment, but this is also in the CRM. So every account has like an account summary field, and it gets like stamped with all this data in like a summary fashion. This is more so like a digital, you want to dig into it. It's also in their dialer. Like I think Nooks pulls in data from the CRM. So we just make sure that the field is visible. And so when they're calling on Nooks, they can just see that data flashing to them. And then it's also in sales, in Slack. So you can query the bot, or if an opportunity or a meeting comes in, it like immediately scores the account and like has all the links that you can sort of click into.
Incredible. And I assume this is like rerunning on some sort of schedule, monthly, weekly schedule,
Yeah.
something like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we run the signals, the third-party signals on 30 or 60-day refreshment basis. And then I think the firmographic shape is more stable, so that runs like per quarter.
Got it. Love it. Incredible. Yeah, this is awesome. This is awesome. It's crazy to think, yeah, this, just like trying to do this 18 months ago would be so insane.
Yeah, for sure.
This is awesome. By the way, Michelle, I'm gonna go to you next, but Nandika, I know you put out a really cool article. I'll find it in a second here, or if you have it handy, I'd love to put it in chat so people can look at that. I know that article had like a bunch of cool information in it. So that would be helpful for folks. Yeah. All right, Michelle, take us through your account scoring journey in a little bit more detail, if you would. How did you think about this? What did you build? What tools did you use?
Yeah, I can also share my screen too, maybe.
Amazing.
Show, but yeah, we a little bit of a different use case, but similar in that we just very large growing team, and so we have lots and lots of reps to build books for, and large goals that we're trying to hit. And so balancing, figuring out, first of all, answering questions of like, what is our TAM, what is our SAM, and from those, what are the accounts that we should be prioritizing? So taking like hundreds of thousands of accounts and scoring them and prioritizing to build books first. So the way I did that was through Anthony built this account scoring and white space skill, and I used Claude Code and Cursor to build this web app, fully functioning web app. And the areas that I was looking for, and this is our enterprise scoring model, is really trying to answer the question of like, how big is the opportunity? Is there growth and momentum within the account? And like how strong focused is the fit? And so we pulled a lot of, for us, we care about teams or companies that are really focused on outbounding. And that comes from a couple different things. If they have large SDR AE teams or growing SDR AE teams, that is like one of the most important signals that we could ever get on a company. And so that's why you'll see persona headcount size the way it is here. RevOps is also a very important use case and persona for us. funding, and then tech. So are they using our main competitors? Do we have similar tech stacks, AI native tech stacks? Are they using CRMs that we can support? I have some marketing 1P data in here as well that we're pulling in. Momentum, so growth and momentum. So the tuning of the larger categories will look very different for each segment, but the way we think about an enterprise is like the size of the prize matters a bit more than like the small changes that are happening within the company, but still tracking that 1P data always super, super important for us. Hiring momentum. And then this is super interesting. So like what percentage of the teams of the company are actually outbounding, right? That's a signal to us that they are an outbound led company versus like PLG or channel sales or some other method. And then this I found really cool. This is all Anthony's brainchild, but we really don't care about B2C companies. And so unless you're B2B and B2C, so we're penalizing the overall score by X amount, amplifying ones that are more likely to purchase a cutting edge tool like Nooks, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's kind of how we land here at a score. And what I love about this is this is all very visible. This will be visible to reps, but they can actually click out and link out and start building trust in the numbers, which is something that we didn't get from most vendors. It's usually like a black box number versus this you can actually click out. Actually, let's click here and we can see every person that's being counted, which is hugely valuable for us. And then important for RevOps is the evaluation piece of it. How do you actually know you've tuned all of these signals right? Like, how do you know that you're, separating the gold from the rest, and and that you've also put your tier cutoff. So, scores are a little bit difficult to understand because you're just ranking one account against another, but everybody understands that a tier A is better than a tier B, better than a tier C, etc. And so just, making sure that both our win rates look good per segment and that our gold coverage, so percentage of customers that are in gold by tier, match up, etc. So, yeah.
By the way, another thing that's cool is when you move the sliders, the accounts move around when you're on your accounts tab, right? Is that right?
If we wanted to set it for like purely size, 5 would be the best account that we could go after. Exactly.
So it's sort of nice to be able to. I always think there is a little bit of science and a little bit of art to account scoring. You could totally build a machine learning model that took, every single closed one and had them all ranked from 1 to it. Let's say you had 1,000 closed one, you could have them all ranked from 1 to 1,000, but that's useless, right? It's just overfit to your closed one. So you want to respect what you can learn from your closed one about what a good fit looks like, but make sure the model generalizes. And so it's sort of nice to have, to look at the evaluation and make sure that the weights you're putting on sort of roughly do map well to your closed one and your win rates and so forth, while also sort of making sure that where you set the sliders also intuitively makes sense and is sort of logical, not just sort of statistically overfitting, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah.
And by the way, Michelle, somebody at Soham, what's up, Soham? Good to see you here. Soham asked, how long from ideation to being in the wild? So meaning when you started this account scoring project, how long did this take?
Actually, I mean, it's been iterated over and over again for many weeks, but it took me to actually like build this out probably a few days, maybe a couple days of super focused work. But yeah, maybe it takes time to get feedback from the floor and tune it, and then you think of different things to add and layer onto it, like. It made sense to add gold coverage and win rates just to see like, okay, we're calling out our gold customers, but do win rates also look right between the tiering? Do I have the right number of tier A and B accounts as our SAM? Like, did I do that tiering right, to make sure we have enough, because you can try to make the perfect scoring model and end up with 20 tier A accounts. It's not what we want to, but have to balance it for the books that we're trying to build and feed. So yeah. And then
Incredible.
I'll end with scoring only matters if reps are able to fully execute on it. And there's plenty of account research and intelligence here. I think where we kind of layer this on is bringing it back into Nooks, which Nandika shared that you guys do this as well, which is cool. But you pull up, if a rep gets glean as an account, you can kind of look into why now, who are the right people we should be reaching out to. You can build agents on top of this, and so you can take action, but also get a lot of deep intelligence as well.
Awesome. Yeah, Anthony, by the way, can you talk to a little bit? So this is open source. This is a skill you can download. Is that right? Can you talk
it's
about
a skill,
this?
and you don't, by the way, have to use our data. So if you use the skill, but you hook up data that you already have, that's totally fine. It will give you the same. You're obviously welcome to use our data, and you can send me a note, by the way, a@sumble.com if you want some credits to try it out. But you can also use any data you want with it. And I just put a link in for those who want to download that skill, which will replicate Michelle's web app. And we learned a huge amount. One of the nice things about working with Nate and Michelle and others is each time we do a project like this, like the evaluation tab came from Michelle. She wanted to know how well it fit her closed one, right? And so this is not, really, this in a lot of ways encodes best practices that we've learned from many customers, as opposed to being our own sort of clever pieces. I was going to point to a couple of things that I think are pretty important. One is I've seen so many account scores where it's like Apple, JP Morgan Chase on top, and something that Michelle's score does that's really nice is, size is a factor, but you also care about the growth of a company and then the concentration, right? So if you just score on, who has the most SDRs or who has the most software engineers, it's always going to be huge companies. But very often, fast-growing companies are quite interesting because they're hitting through scale points and reaching for new solutions and more likely to buy stuff. And so, where you set the size versus growth slider is interesting. Then concentration is also very interesting. So Michelle had that in her scoring model. If you sell to a company that has one SDR and they're a 10,000 person company, you are not very central to what they do. On the flip side, if they have 10 SDRs and they're a 50 person company, you are extremely central to what they do. So that's why we also really think, that's why I think adding in concentration is really quite valuable. Similarly, if they're using outreach, but very few teams or very few job posts ever mention outreach versus, a high fraction of job posts mention outreach. The technology you sell is sort of very central to what they do. So you want to just avoid proxying size. I, by the way, also think that you should, when you score accounts, what does 82 mean? I always think it's nice to rank accounts. And I think I saw this on yours, Nandika. You had this Oracle on one end and something else on the other end, and where did Cloudflare sort of fit on that ranking? I thought that was what I thought it looked like. I think it's really nice to it means more to know this is the 100th ranked account or the 1000th ranked account than showing somebody this account is an 82 or an 86. So which often doesn't mean much. We spoke about calibrating against closed won deals. I think that's really good. And by the way, something the skill does for you, which is nice, is it moves the sliders into a position that sort of fits your closed won reasonably well, while sort of remaining logical. By the way, Nandika mentioned that she runs her scoring, on different cadences. One nice thing you can do, something we do, we put data in Michelle's HubSpot every single day. And it's very true, it doesn't move much day to day, but something like, let's say you include funding, for instance, if a company raises funding, immediately their score shoots up and you don't have to have the overhead of worrying, oh, is this stale? Is it not stale? And the other thing that's very nice about putting data in daily into a data warehouse or into HubSpot is if you do provide deep links to the data, so that we say a company has 20 AI engineers and you can click, if it's daily updates, then the link you click should always map, the data that you see. So a couple of things that, and I really do like that deep link thing that Michelle showed, because, to the point made earlier, and I'm trying to remember who said it. I don't know if it was Kyle or somebody else made the comment they don't trust their account scores. You trust it much more if you know that the 20 AI engineers drove the score, and you can click and see who the 20 AI engineers are. That means two things. You can both believe the data because you can touch and feel it, and you can actually prospect it too, because you can go and grab their email addresses and actually do outreach. So the score doesn't end up being this like dead thing, but it both a rep can trust it and prospect off it are some nice properties of sort of good account scoring, at least based on what we've seen. So those are a couple of things I wanted to bubble up, from Nandika and Michelle's demo, across some of the different customers we've seen.
Yeah, and I think that's, by the way, I know, Anthony, we've talked about this a little bit, but it's very counterintuitive, this like stack rank of accounts, and like, you might be an SMB rep and your highest ranked account might be a 22, and that feels sort of weird. But actually to have a single model across your entire company is actually better. And then the SMB rep knows that like the 22 is the highest in my book of business. I have 200 accounts and 22 is the highest ranked account. So I now, as a rep, have a call down list of these are the accounts or people ranked, and then it's living, breathing. So it's the latest data, and I can click through it. It's not a black box. It's not just like Claude code with some APIs and I get an 82 spit out or an A3. It's like I can actually click through and see, okay, so-and-so account is 22, which is highest on my list. I can click through and understand why that is the case. And then the last thing I'd say is, like, for me as a rep, I want to know why it's a 22, because I'm going to use that in my outreach. That's what I'm going to say when I call them using Nooks, or that's what I'm going to say in my email to them. And so it's important to have the context of, why they have surged in my target account list, and why, the account model is telling me out of your 200 accounts, these are the most likely to take a sales conversation with you this week if you reach out to them.
Totally. By the way, something you said, which I believe, but is controversial, is to try and have one account scoring model, not one per segment. And I know Michelle and I debated this, and this is something, I think I'm a minority view here, but my view is if you can have one account score, that's only one thing to maintain. If it can work across enterprise, mid-market and SMB, it's often hard. It can legitimately be the case that there are different attributes for each segment. You really do need multiple models, but I always say, like, do your best to avoid multiple models, because it's just yet another thing to have to keep in your head. Oh, we're changing something about our ICP. I have to propagate that change across 3 models versus 1. But that of the things we put in the post I shared, that's perhaps the one that is most controversial, and I think I'm honestly probably a minority view on that. And Michelle, you can feel free to chime in, and because you ended up trying one model and you ended up finding that it was better off with 3, right?
Yeah, I think might be bit more of a, like, too much of a perfectionist here. I think 1 would have been fine. I think that just like how our upmarket and downmarket teams operate are just very different. And so that's one thing that I noticed of like enterprise level companies versus like these commercial companies who are getting like their first SDR leadership hire. They may not have any SDRs today, but like they're hiring, they raised some funding. So some of those attributes should be signaling up a lot higher. And so I couldn't make that work in one model. And so that's why I decided to split it. I initially had 2, and then I decided, okay, all of our segments are a little bit different. And so I split it into 3, but I think like an upmarket, downmarket score would have been fine too.
By the way, I think the approach you took was really good, where you try one, you see things that you just can't get to work with one model, and only then go to, add the complexity of 2 or 3, which I think is the right approach.
Yeah. But I also think your accounts or scoring skill did a really nice job at normalizing for size too. I don't know if you talked about that, but so that we could have done well with one one or two scores because that wasn't a concern. Like we weren't like just overweighting companies who had really large teams.
Yeah, with that growth and concentration metric for sure.
Yeah, maybe related here. Another question was, how do y'all think about engagement models relative to scoring? For instance, X percentage bump in score or scores greater than Y means an AE versus an SDR engages. Maybe Nandika or Michelle, either of you have a take here.
Yeah, I think it depends on the shape of your go-to-market team. Like at default, BDRs do outreach or AEs don't. So it's not an issue, but you can definitely work that into your model if it's above a certain threshold that you hand that off to an AE versus a BDR.
Yeah, what about Michelle? How do you
Yeah.
handle this?
We're tackling it a little bit differently. It's still a little bit in works, but we're actually building an engagement intent score separately because we have a lot of data there, and so that's more like intent is more like inbound, right? It's not truly inbound, but it's classified as it versus like an account scoring model helps build the bucks of like who are going to go outbound or warm to then get them to come inbound or engage with us. So we're building an entirely different actionable scoring model based off of that.
Something that I've seen done, at least for, for teams at some scale, is you might decide, okay, in enterprise we want X number of accounts per rep. Mid-market we want Y number of accounts per rep. Figure out where the breakpoints in those segments are, and then just go off the rank, right? Share out the top 500 or whatever it is. Another approach can be, another approach I've seen is like, I want all of the top 3,000 accounts allocated. And you sort of start off with that principle. And so that's, I always encourage, so Ham, an emphasis more on the rank rather than the score. How many accounts do you want to allocate? And then, and by the way, a nice thing you can do is you can sort of you can go down to the 2000th ranked account, and you can look at it and look at what drove it to be a 2000th ranked account and sort of think, am I excited about this account? Like, is this where the cutoff is? And if you're very excited about the 2000th ranked account, then you go, you go a little bit further down the list is sort of one way we've seen it done.
And then do you allocate, let's say a team has 3 SDRs and they're going to scale to 6 SDRs in the next 12 months. Are you putting a kind of like a holding target account list somewhere? How do you think about this kind of side of things? Is there like a Salesforce admin seat or a HubSpot admin seat that is like a holding ground for additional future account? Or how do you think about this, Michelle? It looks like you're nodding your head.
Yeah, we do that. Also, like book equity is super important to us. So making sure that, like we're round robining the best set of accounts across all the reps, but also because we're hiring so much every month that we're also like holding that those future reps are a part of that round robining process, and they get, they don't lose out just because they weren't here a month ago or something.
By the way, another approach I've seen done, which maybe is a little bit less equitable than Michelle's approach, but all accounts are allocated, and accounts where progress hasn't been made, you set the expectation up front that accounts where there isn't progress are going to be allocated as new reps come in. It's nice from an efficiency standpoint, but then you do risk that the best accounts in a territory sort of get picked off, and then those that where there isn't meaningful activity or opportunities or so forth are the sort of quote unquote leftover accounts. And so the reps coming in do get a worse book. But I have seen that approach taken as well. It's the trade-off there is kind of tough.
Yeah, something we do to balance that too is like, make sure everyone's working there. If you're not, if you don't have activity in 30 days, you're probably going to lose the account. And then we also allow reps to like remove accounts from their name up to a certain amount. And because we have like the book sizes that we've built with territories, you can go and ask for accounts too. So if you see something else in the database that, maybe held for someone else, but it's an account that you're excited about and work today, then we allow reps to grab them up to a certain limit too. Yeah.
I want to just quickly, before we move on, I want to just reiterate, Anthony, you talked about this a little bit, but this idea of like load bearing, account scoring being load bearing. So we're talking a lot about like assigning books of business. I think inbound is another one, automating whether you route things to a human or an agent, whether it's tier 1 or tier 3 or you know, whatever the score delineation might be. What are other things downstream that account scoring touches? Anyone can pick this one up.
I mean, I think that account scoring done really well should be used by RevOps, sales, and marketing. And I think the marketing piece is key here. And I think, Michelle, you know, you and I have spoken a bit about this, right? You want, if you're prioritizing 3,000 accounts, you want those 3,000 accounts also to be the accounts that you have ABM coverage of as well. And so something I think that is really powerful, you know, there's always, there's grumbles about, you know, from reps to RevOps that they didn't get good accounts, and this, you know, doing this really well helps solve that. Then there's also grumbling between sales and marketing very often that there isn't alignment and there's not sort of a consistent focus on the right accounts. And I really believe having a shared data backbone is crucial to this. If you have one account score that sort of dictates who, you know, ABM campaigns, you know, focus on, as well as who sales reps focus on, and which accounts are allocated and so forth, then you sort of have this like, it doesn't solve all of the coordination between marketing and sales, but it really does solve a decent chunk of it, right? It creates a lot of clarity on who we care about.
Yeah. Okay, Kyle, you asked the value chain of account scoring. What's the end-to-end steps and where does GTM Alpha get created? GTM Alpha is divergent from the average approach and where there is less coverage around what good or best practice is. Does anyone want to take a crack at that?
I'll take a quick crack at it because I really truly believe this. I think it's data quality. That is GTM Alpha. If you could build the best frameworks, agents, whatever, but if you don't have the quality down, none of it really matters. And so finding the vendor that, for us, it was Sumble, that has like, yeah, just true, like as reliable and as accurate as possible, where you can actually build and instill trust with reps.
Yeah.
That's Alpha we found. Yeah.
I think it's the boring and correct answer. Absolutely. 100%. Okay, I know we just have a few more minutes here. I want to talk a little bit about how y'all tracked success for this. So when, you know, kind of the before and after of account scoring. Nandika or Michelle, feel free to chime in here, but I'm curious how you tracked, you know, whether your account scoring project was successful or not, and how you continue to track that.
Yeah, I think it like still is early days of implementation, like it being around for the go-to-market team in terms of being practiced and used. But from what I've seen, like preliminarily, like digging into like touch points per rep that converts into like an opportunity or a meeting, or the quality of meetings, I think you can see that sort of move towards the touch points per opportunity. I've seen like trending down, which I think is sort of testament maybe that we're identifying the right fit, right timing accounts well, that when we do reach out to them, that they convert into a demo or a meeting. So I think that's maybe like a good North Star to anchor towards. And then also just like the opportunities that are coming in, like when we score them, like how do they rank? And the opportunities that are closing, like where do they sort of sit when they like do close? Like, are we closing tier 1 and tier 2 accounts? And if we're not, like why? Or even like a few months down the line, like if we're looking at churn rates, it would tell us like a good post-sale story as well. Like if we did manage to sign a good account, like are they churning? Or if they're not churning, maybe because they were like a good fit from the beginning. So I think there's like a lot of like data analysis that's really fun to do like down the line.
Yeah, love it. Michelle, how would you answer that question? How you track success of account scoring?
Yeah, I think all in the similar ways that Nandika is. I'll also add like model isn't considered successful unless sellers trust it. And so just probably like survey, getting a lot of feedback or disqualification rates decreasing or reps more happy with their territory. Yeah, adoption matters just as much as model accuracy. And the rest will follow, right? Like if reps are happy with their book, they'll work it well, they'll do the rest, and we'll see win rates and TRAs and Bs go up, and those should look higher than the rest at the end of the year and whatnot. And yeah, and also that there's rep preference for these assigned accounts, and that they're not finding good accounts elsewhere. So we've done a good job at both coverage and naming like the good accounts.
Yeah. As we wrap here, Anthony, anything else that you want to call out that we haven't talked about or closing remarks?
I also just wanted to emphasize on evaluation metrics, because this really should be shared infrastructure with marketing. A lot of the marketing metrics, if you've really landed account scoring and it's this shared fabric, MQL to SQL conversion is another one that I think is a really big one that you should see improvement on. And so it's just like, a way to think about it is account scoring, and then we should do another one at some point on people scoring. Like these are the two biggest sticks you can pull. If you get those two things right, they're sort of very leveraged or load bearing, I guess is the term I used earlier, that really should lift up just about all the metrics you care about. Ultimately revenue, but all the intermediate inputs to that as well, MQL to SQL conversion, win rates, and so forth.
Yeah. Let me ask one more question, then we'll close out here. So I wanted to ask this anyway, and Andreas brought it up. It's a good point. How do you find what good looks like? Maybe Michelle, we can ask you. How do you, like, for me, I came up in sales. I think salespeople have good input. There's other things too, but like getting their feedback. How do you do this? How do you iterate? Do you have sort of a hypothesis and build against it to kind of build that out?
Yeah. I guess I'm lucky I joined Nooks when we already had a lot of customers, so we have a good sense of what good looks like. So parsing out the best of the best customers who are growing, high NDR numbers, lots of upsell ops. But I think, like the top outbounders of our company, they know what good looks like. So just really spending a lot of time talking to them, interviewing them, and trying to see what similarities pop up, and shadowing their workflow like end to end, like what is every single step that they take, and trying to just make sense of that.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Anthony, I know you put a blog post in here. Nandika, I know you did as well. And then I put everyone's LinkedIn in here. So if it's cool, I hope that's all right. Folks can connect with you and ask more questions. And then, yeah, Anthony, we should do another one about people scoring, because I think that's another can of worms. Amazing. Well, I know we're a few minutes over here, but I appreciate everyone being on, hanging out. Like I said at the beginning, this was recorded. I'll put those links in the recap as well and send this out to everyone that is registered. And thanks for being here. Appreciate everyone. Nandika, Michelle, Anthony, thanks for sharing the nuggets of wisdom with us.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Brendan.
Amazing. All right. See y'all.
Bye.
Bye.